Welcome to Hot Topics in International Trade, brought to you by Brewer Law Group and Brewer Consulting Group. Hi, this is Bob Brewer with Brewer Law Group and Brewer Consulting Group. Welcome to the podcast with me, once again, you may remember her, Megan Mohler, Senior Associate Attorney here at Brewer Law Group. How you doing, Megan?
Good. Thanks for having me.
All right, so as you also may know, Megan's sort of our sanctions and export guru here. And we were just chatting about Venezuela a few minutes ago. I thought, hey, let's do a podcast on that because this will be interesting. Now, I had looked up a couple notes. It just says as of mid-2026 here that the United States has been adjusting rather than completely lifting its sanctions regime on Venezuela. But on top of that, you and I, obviously, the earthquake has been, oh my God, how devastating now, you know?
Yeah, it's a tragedy.
Yeah, and you know, we're human. So what are we doing? How are the sanctions kind of intertwined with what's going on there? I mean, but get us kind of caught up with Venezuela right now on that, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. So in late January, there was an easing up on the restrictions on Venezuela. New general licenses were published by the Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC. Uh-huh. And so starting then, it kind of just ramped up this slew of more and more general licenses becoming available. I mean, of course, they come with their stipulations.
Right.
The government doesn't want to lose track of what's happening in Venezuela. But again, with the recent earthquake, there's another general license to allow for additional aid to Venezuela.
Last time I checked, there was like 3,350 some odd people dead. And there was like 16,700 that are wounded, and they're still digging people out of there.
I know.
Now, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought President Trump had also cut a check for a few $100 million to help with that. I know.
Maybe.
Maybe. I think he did.
That doesn't pertain to sanctions, so
I'm just saying that helps.
That.
But, you know, when you look at it from the standpoint of that, though, there was targeted, I think, easing on my notes here for energy and commercial activities. Mm-hmm, and that's, Can you tell you a little bit about that, maybe?
Sure. I mean, a lot of the biggest industries that Venezuela has were state-owned. Yeah. So a lot of the OFAC restrictions were state-owned banks, you know, state-owned oil companies, state-owned energy sector companies. Yep. So a lot of the general licenses now relate to those industries, and they're kind of easing up on the restrictions. They're allowing for contract negotiations with those companies. Now, of course, before you can, execute a contract, OFAC wants you to have a license in place.
Right.
So, it's activity like that. It's allowing for more room for business opportunities.
Yeah, because in the beginning, I mean, when we were shutting down, actually, the Venezuelan, when they were drilling, and you can't just shut that down and then fire it back up, because the way that porous material's in there, it's like concrete, and that just goes away. So they're never going to be back to capacity. When Chevron and others are saying, do you want us to do that? They would actually take $100 billion or something crazy like that for us to go back in and get that back to capacity. I mean, full capacity. So, like, where are we at this point? Well, that's the big deal right now with oil. I think we're right at around, it used to be peaking at around, I don't know, before all this happened, like 770,000 barrels a day. Now it's about 500,000 barrels a day. Price of a barrel maybe between 65 and 70 for somewhere in there. I mean, that's $2 billion. I mean, when you talk about money, is Venezuela getting all of that? Well, no. Once they pay Chevron and some of these other companies and everybody else in the licensing agreement, how much are they getting? They're still getting about 50 to 60% of that revenue. So it's kind of working out that the easing of the sanctions a little bit. Mm-hmm. There is some money coming in. Are they ever going to get back to full capacity on that? Well, again, that's a huge investment.
Well, that brings you to a good point, too. A lot of the general licenses, they provide for activity, but they still don't want you paying directly these companies. They want any payments to go to this federal fund that the U.S. has set up, right, so that they very closely monitor the exchange of money in this new activity.
Well, it used to go to Qatar, and now it doesn't anymore. Now it comes straight into the U.S. So I'm always thinking about how are we handling that? It's a head scratcher, quite frankly. Well, it just is. It's the current administration. How do you think things are shaking out there a little bit with this and the licensing? I mean,
we definitely have more and more clients asking us about Venezuela.
okay.
There was never an all-out restriction on doing business with Venezuela.
Right,
You were
right.
fine if you stuck to the private sector, and screened everybody there. But now that it's opening up the governmental and federal sector of Venezuela, there's just more questions. People want to make sure they're doing it correctly. So that's where we come in.
Well, and I mean, so another thing they said, the gold sector authorization. Did you heard about that one? Where OFAC issued a new general license in March, authorizing certain exports and transactions involving Venezuelan gold. How about that one?
Yeah, the minerals sector.
Yeah.
Yep, falls under there.
Yep, and then contract and arbitration rule changes. This was recently in June. OFAC amended multiple Venezuela-related general license issue changes, allowed greater flexibility in contract drafting, expanded permitted dispute resolution venues beyond the United States. So this is include jurisdictions such as the UK, France, Singapore, and then they clarified how U.S. law requirements interact with mandatory Venezuelan regulatory requirements. So they're kind of trying to make that.
So I mentioned that fund earlier where any payments to or any new contracts, the payments have to go through this federal fund that's been set up.
Right.
That's the exclusion from that is for anything that's like a requirement at the local level, like any taxes that need to be paid as a part of the new business.
Okay. Then I have to still go through my notes here that I was trying to just, it says aviation, telecommunications, transportation licenses. In June, recently, they issued new license authorizing certain aircraft safety-related activities involving Venezuelan airline Conviasa, or whatever that is. Sounds like reissued telecommunications and mail service authorizations, updated guidance affecting transactions tied to PDVSA-related bonds.
Yeah, that's the state-owned oil big company. Mm-hmm.
So then we get into just, not everything's lifted, obviously. So there are continued sanctions enforcement in place with Venezuela. Despite these licensing changes, the U.S. continues to enforce, it said, asset blocking sanctions on numerous Venezuelan officials, entities, and networks that we've singled out, obviously. Restrictions related to oil trading, corruption, narcotics trafficking, and terrorism concerns, of course. And then last in my notes is designations affecting vessels, companies, and individuals connected to sanctioned activities. We will hunt you down.
Well, it's really interesting, too, because while they're easing up on the sanctions on Venezuela, they've just imposed newer sanctions on Cuba. And, the relationship between Venezuela and Cuba has always been very close. So it's like, we'll give you a little bit more room on this side, but absolutely no room on this other side.
Right. Right. So it's important to review the specific general licenses and recent OFAC. They do. Do you ever go through the FAQs? I do all the time. Frequently asked questions here, because some activities that were previously prohibited may now be authorized under defined conditions, like Megan's saying here, while many restrictions remain fully in force. You stay on top of that. Bottom line. We hear the bottom line here. The recent trend is selective sanctions relief through licensing. Selective, key operative word.
And licensing.
And licensing.
An important word.
Not a broad removal of sanctions. Okay, we get that. But the U.S. government continues to maintain substantial pressure on Venezuela while permitting limited categories of energy, transportation, communications, and commercial activity under carefully, very carefully defined rules.
Oh, yeah. They want to keep their thumb on the pulse here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm hoping that they really, it's so sad to see what's happened there. I mean, what Mother Nature has done to this country right in the middle of what we just did. I mean, that's just a double whammy there for them. And I mean, when you talk about people having absolutely nothing, can you imagine that?
No.
The government gave you a tent.
And a building falls on it.
No, I'm just saying, even that could happen too.
It's very sad. We
we lost everything. So there's got to be a way that, and I'm saying you got to lift more. We got to do more. I think that's where we show the world we're not as bad as.
Well, that's the thing too. This is a very slow easing up on the sanctions.
Yeah.
They're going to see how things go, and then if it goes well, then I can see them also lifting it more in the future. But it's a slower process. It's only been a few months.
Okay. We're sure knee deep in this with a few clients right now, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
They're curious. Very curious.
We're always looking for opportunity, of course, but the earthquake that didn't help. The stability and lack thereof.
Yeah, the efforts are more focused to the humanitarian side.
Yes, as they should be. Absolutely. Well, Megan, anything else you want to say to the kids out there before we part? Anything else on your mind besides even sanctions?
I mean, these sanctions are the hot topic right now, but we still have several other regimes that we're dealing with, and there's new designations every day.
Every day.
So.
All right. Well, that means you got to come back in and give us an update on all those other areas of the world that are changing. Oh, all right. Then she just agreed to do it. All right. We'll see. Senior Associate Attorney here at Brewer Law Group, Megan Mohler. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks, Bob.
We'll see you later.